The mission began with deception. Under the cover of darkness, shortly after midnight, Operation Midnight Hammer launched early Saturday morning. 9 B-2 stealth bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, but 2 acted as decoys, flying west over the Pacific for all to see and a scheduled refueling in the skies near Hawaii with a follow-on flight to Guam.
So that was the scenes from this weekend. Absolutely crazy scenes. And we'll talk a little bit about those scenes later. In the meantime, Trump is saying that the US did monumental damage to Iran. Iran saying that the damage was superficial and it was just a little bit of smoke. Markets hardly responding. Brent crude oil hardly responding. The only market that really got nuked is the crypto market. And I'm going to tell you today why I think there's going to be a big, strong V-shaped recovery from the crypto market, which actually isn't looking very good right now. I mean, we are back to pre-strike levels, but not really looking very good on the Bitcoin price. I'm going to show you why I think that the recovery is going to be pretty quick. Then I want to talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because now every single news reporter, every single headline is all about the Strait of Hormuz. And the truth is that I think you've actually missed this trade. And I'm going to show you exactly why I think you've missed the whole Strait of Hormuz trade and what the next trade actually is. So if that sounds good to you, you know what you need to do. I don't even need to tell you that. Let's just get the show on the road. I don't know about you guys, but to me, this weekend was like a weekend from the future. First, we had Space Invader planes flying from the United States all the way to Iran and bombing a nuclear facility. And then in the same weekend, we get these robo-taxis picking up literally driverless taxi cars, picking up people in Austin. It was an absolute, like, I looked at the news events this weekend and I was like, is this really happening in my lifetime? What an absolute crazy time to be alive. We're going to talk about all of these things. We're going to talk about the robo-taxis. We're going to talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because that's now the big news headlines. And by the way, if you're trading based on the Strait of Hormuz, I've got some bad news for you. You've missed the trade. That trade failed. I'm going to show you exactly what the next trade is. Markets aren't really moving, but I think there's a lot to talk about. So we're going to talk about all of those things. All you need to do, you know what you need to do. You don't need to say run for president. All you need to do, someone said run for next president. Just smash the like button. That's all you need, because that helps us get distribution of the shows. And then I'm going to go and bring you guys some alpha. Amazing alpha here today. Also, I'm going to talk about altcoins, because if you are holding altcoins, it felt like Trump's B-2 bombers actually went and dropped bombs on our altcoins. That's what it really felt like this weekend. And now we're in a position where if you look at the altcoins, or even if you just look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, it's like pretty much at a cycle high. It doesn't look like it's going to be stopping. But I actually want to show you that there is some hope for the altcoin people. I'm going to show you, if you're holding altcoins, there is hope for the altcoin people. Okay, so I'll show you that hope. So let's go. Let's get the show on the road. So these are the scenes. I mean, this is a 2-minute video. One of the best videos that I've seen.
The mission began with deception. Under the cover of darkness, shortly after midnight, Operation Midnight Hammer launched early Saturday morning. 9 B-2 stealth bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, but 2 acted as decoys, flying west over the Pacific for all to see and a scheduled refueling in the skies near Hawaii with a follow-on flight to Guam. But 7 B-2s did not fly west.
I mean, you understand the precision and what's going on with this attack. This is like absolutely crazy. No communications from the 2 planes that actually broke away.
Quietly peeled away and secretly flew east with minimal communication. Their destination? Iran's underground nuclear facilities. First into Iran were American fighter jets to also serve as decoys and draw fire from the Iranians. The B-2s then entered Iranian airspace at 6 p.m. Eastern, just after 2 a.m. local. 40 minutes later, 14 massive bunker-busting bombs were released by the B-2s. 12 hit the underground nuclear site in Fordow, 2 hit Natanz. At the same time, those 15-ton bombs from the B-2s hit their targets. 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from a guided missile submarine slammed into Isfahan, with its centrifuges buried even deeper than Fordow. Strike
It was a crazy operation. Now, after the operation, you've got Trump claiming that their attack was absolutely successful, and that they did monumental damage. The Iranians, not so much. They're saying, look, it was all basically a visual. It was basically all superficial, and effectively just caused superficial damage to the nuclear facilities. Iranian TV, Trump has warned the Iranians not to escalate this, and the Iranians have pretty much said, no. Every single American is now a target for the Iranian war, and that's pretty much what's going on there now. Trump is calling for a regime change. He's calling for, on Truth Social, he said, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why would there be a regime change? Why wouldn't there be a regime change? So I think an absolutely great or crazy move by the Americans. I think what was also very smart is that the Americans did this when both the markets and the futures markets were closed. You'll remember last week when there was a holiday, I think it was Juneteenth in the US. We said it would be a great move if the US actually used the holiday to actually bomb Iran. But the thing about that holiday is that on that holiday, the futures markets were still open. This time they attacked when all the markets were closed. And so the only market that could actually respond was crypto. Now, the reason why I think the timing of the attack was when it actually happened is markets were closed. It gave America the chance to set the tone and to set the narrative, right? And it even gave them the chance, while markets were closed, to go and do other strikes or deal with any of the after effects of a bad strike. So if the US had struck and something had happened and Iran had actually fought back, it would give them time to strike or to strike again or to fix the mess before this actually happened. In this case, the attacks were actually successful. And so it gave them the chance to actually take hold of the narrative in the media. So you bomb Iran, everything goes well. You don't want the markets to move. You set the narrative in the media. What's the narrative in the media? Monumental success, amazing attacks. We completed very successful attack on the Iranian things. The only market, though, that wasn't closed when this happened was, of course, the crypto markets, right? And so what you can see is that the market that got flushed out the worst was actually the crypto markets, because there was literally nowhere else for people to buy or to sell or to vent their how scared they were, their fear. They couldn't. There's nowhere else they could express their fear in markets, and so crypto landed up paying the price for this whole thing. It's actually quite interesting. I discovered a site this week, and I'll tell you, I've used the site before, but I rediscovered the site. It's called Weekend Wall Street. And what this does is it almost simulates Wall Street trading on weekends. So when the markets are closed on the weekends and the futures are closed, you can actually go to Weekend Wall Street and you can actually trade. Now, there's not that many markets and there's not that much liquidity, but it's still a place to gauge what markets were actually thinking. So what were markets actually thinking? So what were markets actually thinking? Well, by the time markets actually opened, pretty much nothing happened. As you can see, the S&P pretty much unchanged. The oil price pretty much unchanged from before the strikes and from before the weekend. And I love this tweet because this tweet actually sums it up quite well. It says, stock futures are just a bit lower. Crude oil is just a bit higher. Gold is just a bit lower. The dollar is just a bit higher. And Bitcoin is just a bit lower. That's exactly what actually happened. And so from a timing point of view, the US really timed this amazingly well. They struck, they took control of the narrative, they had enough time to strike again or create a new narrative or manage the downside. And so by the time the markets actually opened, it would seem like absolutely nothing happened, and there was no way and there was no collateral damage done to investors and shareholders. And I mean, you got to look at this. I mean, if you look at the daily chart, this is the S&P daily chart. Just look at how well orchestrated that candle basically didn't even move. Same thing with Brent, with oil. So like you look at the oil daily chart. I mean, just look at this. This is the close, and look at pretty much, okay, we're slightly. Okay, actually, no, we're here now. So we slightly below the close, even though we slightly edged up here. Now, Now, the one market that actually did get affected was obviously the crypto market. We had like, what? We had like, 500 million. We had about $1 billion in liquidations if you looked at this thing yesterday. And another market, well, the crypto market, but the real market that got affected was actually the altcoins. So the altcoins absolutely got obliterated yesterday. They're obviously up now because these moves are since the middle of the attack. Now, the truth is that we actually called this perfectly in front runners. I literally said to guys, watch out. You can see it. It's here in my channel in front runners. That was 8:53 a.m. yesterday. And then there was another one. I said, I feel it feels a bit scary, and I think it'll get worse when futures open. There'll be great buying opportunities, and then the markets will actually recover fast. And that's exactly what happened. We got the buying opportunities as the markets opened. If you go to the hourly, if you look at the hourly candles here, as the markets opened, you get this one candle down. When that one candle went down, look at the oil price. Let's quickly just go into the 1 hour chart of the oil price. So this is when the markets were open. The oil price spikes just above the trend line, what we've called the war line. And now the oil price goes down below the war line. And that's pretty much right now where we're at. That's pretty much right now where we're at. So that's pretty much the effect on markets. And I think, again, the US were pretty genius in the way that they timed this thing. And I'm sure it was very calculated. I don't think there was anything coincidental about this. Futures were closed, markets were closed, world markets were closed. The world markets that actually were open, funny enough, if you look at like Tel Aviv, their stock exchange, it's called the TA35. That TA35 all-time highs. Okay, slightly down today, but yesterday when the invasion actually happened, that one actually went to all-time highs. Let's actually just see on the daily. So there we go. On the daily, slightly down on the daily, but generally as all-time highs. I think from an attack point of view, I think I certainly felt like I was watching something out of a sci-fi movie. You know, he has planes taking off in the United States, refueling 6 times on the way there, or 3 times on the way there, 3 times on the way back. 2 pilots in each one of these B-2 bombers. And basically, I mean, decoy planes going around and deception planes going around. Absolutely crazy. And the thing about these planes, the B-2 bombers, is that you know that they are undetectable by radar, are very hard to detect by radar because of the way they deflect the radar beams. Also, they hardly ever fly these planes. Josh, did you know they hardly ever fly these planes? You did know that. Do you know why they never fly them? No, it's not about them being too expensive. They don't fly them because the more time they spend in the air, the more time people can work out how to detect them. And so they're never ever used for shows and demonstrations because that would give people a chance to understand how to track them or how to, right now they can't really track them when they're flying. And if they did fly them, people would work out ways to do it. So these planes are only really used in exceptional circumstances when there's a real job to be done. So a lot of the flying here is done in simulators, and the real attacks here actually they only really bring them out when they need to do real attacks because they don't want people to work out how to use them. So that's the attacks. Now the attacks are finished, and we're starting to see the aftermath of what's going on. And to me, it pretty much feels like the markets have basically said, look, this war thing is pretty much over. Iran's pretty much on its knees. It's not really going to get help. Initially, there were thoughts that maybe Iran would get help from China or maybe Iran would get help from Russia. It doesn't seem like that's what's happening. Putin was asked why he's not assisting Iran. He said because Israel has almost 2 million Russian-speaking people in there. And so he doesn't really want to get involved there, although there are meetings with the foreign minister of Iran and Putin today. And right now, the biggest thing that everybody's talking about now is the Strait of Hormuz. Every single media channel is talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Will Iran actually close the Strait of Hormuz? It's a 21-kilometer shipping lane outside of Iran. And the concern, obviously, is that Iran will actually shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And if it does, then the thing is it'll make oil more expensive. And if oil goes up, well, then there's a whole lot of other crazy implications. So I saw this. So basically, if the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, people are saying it could send the oil price to $150 overnight. If it does, there would be more inflation. If there is more inflation, you wouldn't be able to reduce the interest rates. if you can't reduce the interest rates, you've got to refinance the debt at high interest rates. And so a lot of people are worried about the Strait of Hormuz and whether or not Iran can actually shut it down. If you look at Polymarkets is telling you there's about a 30% chance that the Strait of Hormuz will close before the end of July. So I don't think that there's a really big chance that the Strait of Hormuz actually gets shut down, right? Also, I mean, let's just talk about like what does shut down the Strait of Hormuz actually mean? There's no bridge, there's no gate at the Strait of Hormuz. Shutting it down effectively means that you'd have to put landmines there, and you'd have to put ships, warships there, and basically not let any ships actually pass through. Now the question is, will it actually happen, right? So will they actually shut down the Strait of Hormuz? Now I can't tell you whether or not we're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, but I can show you the history and I can show you the calculations. The first thing is, if they did shut down the Strait of Hormuz, it wouldn't be the first time. Okay, there's been many other times where they've tried to disrupt the flow of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And the reality is they've never actually shut down the Strait of Hormuz. All they've done is affect slightly the flow of ships in Hormuz. And I'll show you just some of the times that it's actually happened. It comes from a Reuters article. During the 80s, during the Iran-Iraq war, the two sides engaged in so-called tanker wars in the Gulf. Iraq targeted Iranian ships, Iran attacked commercial ships, including Saudi. Following appeals from Kuwait, the US president stepped in. Then in April 2023, it happened again. So it's happened many times. In fact, if you look at this chart, you can see pretty much every time that the Strait of Hormuz has been threatened. And what you realize is that even though it can happen, the majority of the time when it does happen, it really marks the top for the oil price. So the question is why? Why does that usually mark the top for the oil price? The answer is pretty simple, right? The oil price responds to the tensions that usually lead up to the closing of the strait or the disruption of the strait. By the time the actual disruption happens, usually the oil price has already factored this in. So generally, when these things actually happen, you can see that the price is pretty much near the top, or not at the top, but close enough to the actual top. The second thing is that remember that the world actually does have oil reserves, right? So generally, what you got to remember is that even if the Strait of Hormuz is closed for a short period of time, it's not like all of a sudden we run out of oil. It's that slowly, the oil price actually lands up going up because we actually do have some oil reserves. And lastly, usually when this happens, other countries step in because there's a lot of countries that are actually incentivized to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz actually opens, right? And I guess the biggest country right now that is incentivized to make sure that the Strait of Hormuz actually stays open is, believe it or not, Iran's only remaining, or one of Iran's only remaining trading partners, just like Crypto Bond says. He says, if they shut it down, China won't be happy. That's exactly what Marco Rubio says. Just listen to this.
To close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at that as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not just by us, but from others. So, look, they're going to say what they need to say. You know, these are the things that need to happen for their own internal politics and so forth. But in the end, we're going to judge them by the actions that they take moving forward.
So you see, basically what he's saying is, look, if they want to shut down, let me just send that to one of my guys here because he's asking me about it. If they want to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, I guess they could. It's not impossible. They could put pirate ships there. They could put warships there. They could disrupt ships there. But let's just look at this. Iran's economy is very much an oil-based economy. 20%, or in fact, all of the Iranian oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, right? That's the only thing right now that is funding Iran. Without oil, there's nothing funding Iran at the moment. I can tell you for sure there's no tourism going into Iran, right? So really the only money that's going into Iran is money coming from oil. Now the question is, who's buying this oil? Because there's sanctions if you buy the oil. Well, the only country that doesn't really give a shit about the sanctions is China, right? And so if Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, the country that is the most affected by this is actually their, I don't know if it's their biggest trading partner. Let's actually just quickly just check with ChatGPT who Iran's biggest ChatGPT. Let's quickly just check this out. Who are Iran's biggest trading partners? I'm almost sure that it's going to tell you that China is one of them. Let's have a look here. Let me know if you prefer Grok or ChatGPT. I actually prefer Grok. I should have used Grok. Much quicker, much better. See, the largest trading partner to Iran is actually, have a look at this. So the largest trading partner to Iran is China. And so if China is their largest trading partner, the last thing that they want to do is upset their largest trading partner who actually gets most of their oil from Iran. So look at this. Like, if you look at the oil, 75% of Asia's oil, particularly China, pass through the strait. And only 10 to 15% of Western oil passes through the strait. So you get it? So like, by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's taking its most important trading partner and basically, let me just send that. And basically, it is shutting down or destroying the trading relationships that they have, because what they're doing, Iran's single biggest trading partner, accounting for 30% of its total trade, is China. And what they're doing is that what they take out is primarily oil, petrochemicals, ores, and plastics, which are all byproducts of oil. So, long story short, as I said on one of my Instagram things that I posted earlier, I said shutting down the Strait of Hormuz is not straightforward as you actually think it is. It's a lot more complicated. And that's why yesterday, when there were many rumors of the strait shutting down, I was kind of skeptical. And I was like, look, I don't think that this is going to happen. I actually think that when the media, the mainstream media, is discussing a trade, when I say a trade, I mean an opportunity or a fear, right? Because when you think about mainstream opportunities, you talk about mainstream media, they're usually discussing opportunities or fears. This one in particular was a fear, and the whole Strait of Hormuz yesterday, everybody was talking about Strait of Hormuz, every headline I read, 𝗙𝗏𝗄𝐵𝐶 letter, Mario Norfolk, everyone was like, Strait of Hormuz. I was like, okay, this trade is already out there in the market. I said, we're in peak Strait of Hormuz, and that's usually when people trade a peak, it's time to move to the next trade. And so I kind of think that if you're trading the markets around the Strait of Hormuz, forget about it. It ain't happening. Now let me show you why I think we're going to get a V-shaped recovery. So if you look at all the other markets, and when I say all the other markets, literally, you look at all the other markets. Oil, that's the oil, that's oil on Friday. Let's zoom out for you. That's oil on Friday, that's oil on Monday. Exactly the same levels. If you look at the S&P 500, so let's go to the S&P 500. Let me say, okay, where were you on Friday? Where are you today? Okay. S&P Friday, S&P today. Pretty much exactly where it is. The only markets that have really been hit are the crypto markets, right? They acted as like these risk elastics. And so now you've got Bitcoin. Let's just go to where we were on Friday. So here we go. So you can see the only market that really actually got hit is we on Friday were at 105,000 and now we're back at 102,000. And the thing is that the altcoins were the ones that actually got seriously obliterated, right? So, I mean, if you look at Bitcoin now, you look at the dominance. Look at the Bitcoin dominance. So if you look at Friday, we were here on Bitcoin dominance. And now we were at 64.5, and now we went to a cycle high of like 66. Now, it doesn't make sense to me that all the markets basically land up in the same place as they were before this whole thing happens. And the one market that doesn't is the crypto market. And so I think something has to happen here. Either the crypto market is leading the normal markets, or the crypto market has a catch-up to play in the normal markets. Now, the reason why I don't think that it's leading the normal markets is because I'm using this, what I call the war line, as the indicator. Remember, I drew this trend line on the oil price all the way from 2022. It's like this downward sloping trend line. And what you can see is that even with all these attacks, even with everything that's going on, what you can see is we're still below this war line. And if we are still below the war line and all markets haven't rebounded, then I've got to say to myself, in the absence of any fear, and you can see there's zero fear in the markets are neutral. There's it's a crazy war, this. Just think about, this is a war where, I don't know, we're at war, but the markets are not scared, neutral, neutral to greed. And if you look at crypto, also pretty neutral. It's crazy. Markets are really pricing in a nothing burger here, except the altcoin markets. Now, when it comes to the altcoin markets, it seems that we're at a cycle. We are at a cycle high for the Bitcoin dominance, right? We are at 66%, and I think I share the same. And if you look at this, is a chart of. Yeah, let me just clean this up a little bit. This is a chart of the altcoins, others versus Bitcoin USD. So if you take the ratio of others versus Bitcoin USD, we've broken down below this. I think it's a 10-year trend line. This is a 10-year trend line. I think we've broken down below this 10-year trend line, which means that right now, altcoins are very, very, very underpriced. Very, very, very underpriced. On top of that, what I want to show you is that if you look at the altcoin season index. Now, what is this altcoin season index? It shows you how many altcoins have outperformed Bitcoin in a certain period of time. If you look at historically, this thing usually bottoms when we get to about here. You can see it. Basically, it oscillates. So you go from down, up, right? So you can see that, right? You don't usually go down, 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 down. In fact, pretty much in the history of altcoins, we've never done that. We've always gone down, up, down, up, down, up. Now remember, this is altcoins as compared to Bitcoin. So this is not just altcoins. It's comparing altcoins to Bitcoin. And in every cycle, what we do is at some point, we actually bottom against Bitcoin. And you can see it. You can see it here. You can see it here. You can see it happened in August 24. And remember, August 24, we bottomed here at actually exactly the same point as we are today. And then we went all the way to 88, and that was in December, right? Now, as Spartak Tommy actually says, yes, we actually usually bottom in June. Now, June's nearly finished, right? So that's Spartak is like, you wrote my show for me today. Well, I didn't really write your show, but you know what I'm saying. So the bottoms usually happen in June, exactly like he's saying. And here we are. Look at this. Look at this. When did this happen? In June. That was the bottom. You see, that was the bottom in June. And if you look here, okay, this one was here. Here is June. So this one was July. So generally, the bottoms actually land up happening sometime in June. Now, again, I know it feels like alts never recover, but remember, the lower we go, the closer we are to the bottom. And at some point, these things turn around. Now, when they turn around, generally, as you can see, the altcoins actually outperform Bitcoin. You see what I'm saying? So remember, it's an oscillator of how many altcoins actually outperform Bitcoin. And again, I can't keep stressing this to you guys enough. It goes in cycles. Cycles go up, down, up, down, up, down. Yes, sometimes, as you can see, we've gone down and down and down, but at some point, this lands up turning. Never in the history of Bitcoin. I mean, this one only takes us to 2018, but we've never got to a point where it's been down and down and down and down and down. It's always up, down, up, down, up, down. Now we are near a bottom. And so Michael van der Pop says, the altcoin season indicator hits its lowest number in 2 years. Fun fact, the lowest indicator in the previous years was June, July, June. So we are at the bottom in June. And so I think we may actually start turning around. Henrik, who's actually been quite accurate with his prediction, says, we're at the bottoming phase. The last time the signal triggered was April 17th. It took 3 days to play out. So what actually happens next? So it feels like we're hitting a bottom when it comes to altcoins. And he's talking about a wave 3 beginning. So remember, when you talk about charts, you got wave 1, which is basically up. Then you got wave 2, which is down. And then you've got wave 3, which is much higher. Then wave 4, and then you got wave 5. And that's pretty much the end of it's the Elliott wave. That's what it's called, right? A, B, C, D, E, right? Exactly. It's called the Elliott wave. Crypto legends need to know that, sir. You what? You copy trading? Oh, you do proper trading. Yeah, we love Henrik. I also love Henrik. I'll get him on the show at some point. But look, I'll say this. This does feel like a bottom. Now, you know, can it go lower? Yeah, I think it can go lower. But it does feel to me like the markets have overreacted to this war. And I think that you can see the V-shaped recovery that I spoke about is already starting to happen. ETH and the altcoins have got a lot of catching up to do. By the way, speaking of ETH and the altcoins, the Blowfin account that I was going to give away on the 10th of July got liquidated. Because the thing was, it got to 2197, bro. That's what our liquidation price was. destroyed. I'll set up another account and I'll give away the other account. It's only fair. All right, so that is the altcoins and why I think we're going to get a pretty much a bottom and a V-shaped recovery. I think we should also talk about this. I mean, this is crazy. I don't know about you, but like, I'm kind of like, what's the word? Like when you feel like you're lucky to be alive or to witness this moment in history. Guys, there are literally driverless cars fetching people in the United States, the most regulated country in the world, or one of the most regulated countries in the world. You literally have driverless cars picking up people and taking them on rides. It's absolutely insane. I don't know if you guys watched all these videos.
Stop or anything like that, which we're going to try later. But just the 3 dots outside of seeing what those 3 dots do.
So there is a pullover button right there. You can do music, control your temperature.
I don't know if you're allowed to answer questions or not, but is this connected to his accounts? Like if he hits Netflix, will it automatically be set up for that? Very cool.
So that's the cars that the self-driving cars that were actually going around Austin, which was absolutely incredible. That's the control room. It's like it's like almost like those old NASA control rooms where they were looking at the number of rides and the number of miles. Obviously, Elon made them pay $420 a ride. Okay, now this is
have a model which
I must say this is where like I was like, holy shit, this guy's a genius. But imagine buying a car and actually earning money just because you own a car. Just like that's the model.
we'll have a model which is kind of like some combination of Uber and Airbnb. So if you're a Tesla owner,
Right.
You'll be able to add or subtract your car to the fleet. So just like in Airbnb, you could like rent out your spare bedroom or rent out your house when you're not using it. And the same thing will be available for Tesla owners. So it's a way for Tesla owners to earn revenue. Instead of having your car sit in the parking lot, your car could be earning money. We'll have a model which is kind of like...
You know, when Elon's selling you a car, when you buy a Tesla and Elon's selling your car, you're basically selling yourself. You're actually buying a car and a business at the same time. And then like you drive your car and then when you're tired of driving your car, you just send it on the road by itself. I mean, like, do you get this? Like, what am I buying? I'm buying a car and a business. Car business. You can drive, you don't need to drive it. It drives by itself. But then you're also buying a business because it just goes out and fetches other people, which is absolutely crazy. Now let's look at the comparison because these self-driving cars aren't new. Like there's the robo-taxi, but then Waymo's got its own car. But the Waymo car is not scalable because the Waymo car has all these radars and shit in it. It costs like $180,000. Tesla's under $40,000. And it's got much more scalable technology. So let's look at Tesla's stock price. Look at that, bro. Look at that. $21 up today, 6% up today. And actually, I wonder if we look at Uber, because Uber would actually probably also go down, right? Okay, let's look at Uber. Okay, Uber's actually slightly down, ever so slightly down. Tesla's up. I actually want to see buy what's called BDO, buy this one. This is the Chinese one, the Chinese auto manufacturer. Okay, it hasn't moved today. So yeah, Tesla stuff doing well. Just guys, one thing that you can do is you can trade all of this actually on Bybit. So you can trade Tesla, you can trade oil, you can trade S&P 500, you can trade all of this on Bybit. I can't show it to you because it's actually only on the app. It's not on the thing. But if you want to trade, and again, I think like it's if you want to be trading on weekends and stuff like that, the best place to do it is actually just go to Bybit. Use this link over here because then you get 50% off your fees. But then you can actually buy the stocks. You can buy and you get a sign-up bonus. But you can actually trade Tesla and you can trade Coinbase and you can trade. There's a lot of these stocks that are coming. Circle, for example. Just look at Circle. I mean, this thing, $260. I mean, that is absolutely insane. There's such a big short squeeze. You can't, I wonder, can you short Circle on Bybit? I wonder if you can. It's not perps, is it? Let's check. Anyway, you can trade all of this on Bybit. That's where I'm trading it because I don't really like using interactive brokers and you got to take money from the bank account into interactive. I just use my crypto money and you can actually trade oil and everything else on Bybit. Use my link. You support us when you do that. Also, you know what? If you open a Bybit account in the next 24 hours, I'll give you a free Bitfunded account. How's that? I'll give you a free $10,000 Bitfunded account. 100 accounts only. Bitfunded, by the way, for those of you who don't know, it lets you trade using other people's money. So you literally trade using other people's money. So if you open a Bybit account in the next 24 hours, I will give you a free $10,000. Fuck it, not sorry, I'm not gonna say it. Not $10,000, $15,000 account. Okay, next, first 100 people only. All right. Lastly, before we go, and I see my V-shaped recovery is playing out, by the way. All right. So this week, 7 days from today, next Monday, the Intro to Crypto School launches. Right. So guys, if you know anybody who wants to get into crypto, wives, family members, moms, mom-in-laws, no, don't send your mom-in-law. Don't send your mom-in-law. You send it. Please, no mom-in-laws. Okay, so send anyone else. We're giving away, it's a free course. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 and I are hosting our own course, Intro to Crypto. We teach them what Bitcoin is, what Ethereum is, what smart contracts are. We don't teach them anything about Cardano, nothing about XRP. We only teach them about the good things in crypto. It's absolutely free. It starts in a week. To secure your spot, there is an Intro to Crypto over here. So just go there. And if you want my alpha and our alpha before anybody else gets it, just go to Frontrunners. It's everything is there, and you get a 30-day money back guarantee. Anyway, guys, it's been amazing being with you guys today. I'll tell you the truth, I actually wanted to stream last night. But the market open was at 12 o'clock at night, South African time. And I thought to myself, is this market open going to be a bloodbath, or isn't it going to be a bloodbath, right? And then, thank God I didn't, because it would have been like streaming that bloody FOMC. I would be streaming and nothing would be happening. And then I would have stayed up like 2 a.m. to stream and nothing would have happened. And then I would have been upset and I would have been tired today and I wouldn't have been able to go to gym. Someone says, why I don't hate Cardano. I think Cardano is a very nice research project. Educate Bybit and tell them to come back to the UK. Educate the UK government and tell them to let things. Someone says, do the prayers. Let's do a prayer. Come on, let's do a prayer for everybody. Market prayer. Is it off? All right, Josh, before we let everybody go, what happened between me and you the last table tennis game? You lost. And the one before that? You lost. And the one last week? You lost. If you're in Cape Town and you know how to play table tennis, I'm looking for someone to play table tennis against, because Josh is just not he's just not up to it anymore. All right, I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Trade well, my friends.